If you're an Airbnb or short-term rental host, you probably have had the dreaded 2 a.m. text message asking what the Wi-Fi code is. Or even better yet, you sent out the door code 6 or 7 times in a message, and still the guest is asking what is the door code as their arrival. Well, what if there was a product that could actually solve all of the headache for you with guest interaction for less than a Chipotle burrito? Today, we're talking to one of the co-founders of one of the coolest AI softwares within short-term rentals, and we're going to help you get back your time and make more profits in the meantime. Let's dive into it on today's episode. Running short-term rentals is constant work. Guest in, guest out, and you're still expected to be your own bookkeeper? I had multiple listings going and no real way to manage the money that was coming in. Between flipping beds and trying to match receipts from a payment a month ago, I couldn't even know if I was making real money. That's when I found Baselane. It's the official banking platform of BiggerPockets, and it handles all of the tracking and reporting I used to do manually. Now I can see real-time financial reports for each listing and know if there's a problem that's arising. For example, last month I had a 300% spike in my electric at one of my properties, and I realized that I needed to do something. I quickly set up a smart thermostat inside of it, and my electricity bill was cut almost in half. Thanks to things like Baselane, I avoided losing my profits and actually getting them back in my pocket. Start protecting your profits today by signing up at baselane.com/BP, and you'll get your $100 bonus right when you sign up. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of BiggerStays. My name is Garrett Brown. I'm the resident BiggerPockets short-term rental expert. And today we have my good friend and another expert in the field on. He's a real estate investor, short-term rental operator, and one of the co-founders of HostBuddy.ai. Jay Ullrich, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Garrett. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, super excited to chat. We met at BPCon 2 years ago, I think. And it was the second we started talking, I instantly knew that you were one of the pioneers, I kind of feel like, and a lot of really driving how to get people's time back in the short-term rental space. And then you really understand it because you're a short-term rental host yourself, which is one thing that I really love when I'm seeing products and, softwares and everybody else coming out, is a lot of people may not know what exactly we struggle with as a short-term rental host. And so let's just kind of take a step back before we dive into all things productivity, AI, making more revenue. What brought you to your journey in short-term rentals? How did you even end up here?
Yeah, I know it's funny looking back on when we met, because I think I went to BPCon in 2024. I saw you speaking there, and it was awesome. You were on, I think, like an operations panel or something very similar. I had never really been to conferences, so beforehand, I'm a short-term rental host. That's why I got into this. I started in 2021, built my business up, got to a point where automation was the key to everything, and AI was really evolving. So decided to create my own tool. Partnered with some really talented developers to automate the guest messaging portion of our business. So that's something where I noticed our guests weren't receiving the most efficient care that they could. I didn't want to hire additional people on my team, and noticed the advancement of AI recently was just insane. And this was back in 2023. So it was let's see if we can try to make something like this. And, we partnered with some really, really smart people, and, now, I'm pushing it as hard as I can, but we want to be that go-to AI messaging solution in the industry where people can use it because they know that it's going to sound the most human and not make you sacrifice the hospitality portion of your business just to automate something like that.
I think y'all do an amazing job on that too. And we'll dive into everything and how I personally use HostBuddy and all of my portfolio that I do too as well. Ever since I met you, I was just stunned at how amazing of a product it was, to be honest. So when you built up your short-term rental portfolio starting out in 2021, were you using arbitrage model, co-hosting? Did you buy a couple properties? How did you kind of get your portfolio started to the point of where you finally realized you're okay, well, now I need to develop something to get my time back, but you had to get some units under your belt before you even had that realization?
Yeah, so I think like a lot of investors, you start while you have your W-2, you have a secure job, but you're let me, this seems interesting. Let me try this out. So for us, we started in a lucky time or a great time where it was 2021, beginning of 2021, I think. And, we started with arbitrage because we were doing our W-2s. There was sort of a spike in COVID where there were a lot of homeowners and property owners that couldn't necessarily fill their units and turn them over quickly. It wasn't really easy. It's not like I called one person. They're sure, yeah, you can do this. It took a long time to find a few people who were down to have us do that model. And overall, we've kept a lot of our clients that we had in the very beginning until now, just because, they've seen how proven this model is. We're taking care of your property. We're giving you exactly what you want every single month. So the arbitrage model is great. I think it still works if you get it for the right price. But we quickly noticed that if we focus on the quality, we can continue scaling and really turn ourselves into a full service property management company. And that way we, de-risk our company and ourselves by not having to give ourselves the, consistent, if we don't hit the rent this month, we're not going to be able to, make money if the market changes, if things change. And then the upside of that is you can also work directly with the homeowner, with the property owner to make improvements, and they're like your partners. You're like, how can we make more revenue? And it's exciting to them. So we love that part of it. So essentially our portfolio now, I think we have around 43 units, half our arbitrage and half our property management, just like anywhere from a 15 to a 25% management fee that we do. We do a lot of smaller, studio, one bedroom stays in the downtown San Diego area. All of our properties are in San Diego. So we really decided to focus in on that one market. We've kind of branched out in between. That timeline from 2021 to 2025 is, definitely rocky. And we learned our lessons along the way of, how to manage in other markets. But we decided to really just focus on San Diego because it's right in our backyard. That's where we live. And when I say we, I haven't mentioned my business partner yet, but Sam is the guy who I partnered with initially. He was on his W-2 as well, doing software sales. I was a civil engineer. We decided to quit our jobs after 9 months.
Oh, wow.
And fully go into it. We had 9 properties after the first 9 months. So we really just sent it fully. And the reason that we got more properties is just straight from referrals of other people saying, these guys are taking great care of our property. They're making us money. They look like they know what they're doing. And if you guys need somebody to take over your property, these guys are doing great. So, and we're like, I don't know, what were we, 22 years old, 23 years old. So we were young and hungry and ready to go. So they saw that, and we still have that fire in our company. But definitely growing at a different pace now, with kind of focusing on HostBuddy at the same time and trying to provide that as a tool to the rest of the space.
Sometimes you just have to look like you know what you're doing. I've learned in life too, to get some people on board, like a little smoke and mirrors is, kind of how sometimes you got to grease the wheel to get it going, especially when you're first starting. So we'll get into HostBuddy kind of shortly, but I kind of want to tackle a little bit because arbitrage, I've had a few people come on BiggerStays and talk about it, and they still run the model very successfully. And then you go everywhere else and on the forums and other places, and they're like, arbitrage is dead. It's the worst thing ever. You can never do anything. And, it's become harder for sure, like as with anything in the short-term rental space. But how have you seen it change since when you started to now? Like, what are some red flags, or what are some green flags when you're talking to a property owner, or even when you're looking at some of the data, all right, I think this is a good model for me to do. And I can't also I'm very adamant about how you did it too. Trying to dominate one market, I always think is a smarter move than spreading yourself thin. So what are you kind of seeing in the market on that side right now?
I'd say when you do start, arbitrage is an easy way to get in, because you're promising the property owner a specific amount, and maybe it's more. Maybe you negotiate at the beginning and you were like, well, I can make $5,000 a month and they're only going to charge me $3,000, but market's $2,500. And, now your sales pitch is, I'm going to make you more money per month. Right. But if you do that without forecasting into the future of how do I replace the furniture? Does that factor into the cost of the margin? Can we actually continue to make money over time? Because our business is 5 years old now, essentially. So when we started it in furnishing these properties initially, it was cheaper stuff because we didn't have a lot of money to go into it. But we didn't think about in 5 years, what's going to happen when we have to replace all these couches and these beds and things like that. So it's you really just have to focus on making sure there's still a margin if the demand drops a little bit, which in a market like San Diego, you hope that it doesn't. But I think everywhere we're just seeing saturation in general, and the demand is still there, but there's a lot of hosts doing it. So I think just not locking into something that doesn't make sense at the beginning is super, super important. We've had deals where it's just we were so desperate that we were yeah, we'll just pay $3,000 for a 1 bedroom every single month. And, that seems like it should work. We'll make $4,000 and then, $1,000 a month, but then you don't think about all the other expenses. And then you start building your team, and then you have full-time salaried employees, VAs, all these software costs, everything stacking up. And those are costs that you're not adding up over time. So I think as far as the data and stuff, every market's different, obviously, and it's softened a little bit, I think, overall, in most markets. And when you do arbitrage, it's hard because you can't necessarily partner with the owner directly if you have an existing agreement just saying hey, we're going to be in charge of the furnishings and all that stuff. So you don't have really the support of being able to go in with them as a partner and be able to improve the property. Because right now, I think you and I both know it's all about being competitive and adding the best amenities. And that's what you preach all the time, because that's how you see your best performing properties, is when you add those things that people are looking for. Because when everybody has, a patio and, a normal sized bed, just, having something that's like, yeah, we have linen sheets, like that's not going to separate you from the rest of the competition. You have to have those over the top amenities. So when you do an arbitrage unit or arbitrage deal, it's more difficult to maintain that. So I said, just like beginning with the end in mind is important. And I know it's hard to when you start, because you just feel like you want to get it going, and things are changing. And I think if you lock into a arbitrage deal now, you just have to make sure that the numbers work and you look into the future and give yourself that factor of safety if the market does soften a little bit more.
That makes so much sense too, because things just change so rapidly. And I've kind of even seen, like, I had a couple arbitrage units before, and, there was some okay things about it. Like, again, it was in kind of the same era where there wasn't as much supply. There's still a lot of demand growing, but I've shifted now to more trying to, get it more into co-hosting and like doing the property management side that incentivizes both sides to make changes. Is that something y'all have been kind of shifting more towards, or even like trying to shift out of the arbitrage units you have and convince the owners to like, hey, can we do a revenue split or something more? Like, what have y'all been doing in that kind of area?
At the beginning, we locked into like a ton of crazy contracts. Some of them are like arbitrage plus a profit share. So we'll do like a flat, this is what your market rent is, but then if they want a piece of it, we'll give them 20% of the profit. And that was just to like really sweeten the deal at the beginning. We would never do that now. But a lot of those deals, and even just the straight up arbitrage ones, we're approaching the owners now and going back and saying, it's funny you asked that too, because we're literally in the process of doing that right now. We've gone to the owners, we give them these like written proposals. I use AI generated images of like, here's what your property looks like now. Here's what it could look like. Here's what it's making. Here's what it could make, using a bunch of data from AirDNA, and then just using ChatGPT to generate images for, making the space look more trendy, adding more amenities, things like that. So they can really visualize it. And it works, because they know that in general, we've been paying way too much for way too long. And I think for a while I was like, I'm scared. Like if I propose this to them, maybe they're just going to end the contract. And it's not like we're losing a ton of money on these arbitrage contracts, but like we're pretty damn near breaking even on a few of them, where we're like, this needs to change now. And if they do decide that that's not good enough for them, then we lose it. And that's it. We're not making money. We're not losing money, but now we can move on and reallocate our resources and our time and our team to other things. So yeah, I mean, we're in the process of still converting, but I think 75% of the owners that we've contacted now for those 23 units that we do arbitrage on have accepted the transition into management. And they're willing to accept the whole partnership aspect of it, where now they're like going to trust us as the professionals to tell them which things we now need to add to the properties. And it's interesting because you tell them like, you could do conservative upgrades, which is going to cost 15K, or you could do the full upgrade that would cost 30K. And now we're going to replace all these specific things. And, I'm running through these options with them, and these are things they've never considered before, because they're just focused on it ever being a long-term rental from the very beginning. So it's a cool process, but you start to realize like, yeah, maybe we have, we've given them a lot of money in the past, and let's adjust it to make it fair.
And everybody in business, like, especially in this and other sides, is like when you first getting started, you just take on what you kind of can, because you go get some trial by fire, deal with some things, and then kind of what I call it, and you're kind of doing right now, is like trimming the fat. Once you kind of get closer to like how you want to operate, like you look at like, okay, these properties, they're not, again, like we're barely breaking even, barely making any money. Like if we cannot get it to something that makes more sense, then it's just probably not the right thing for us, and it's time to let it go. But I believe most of those owners are going to be willing to have that conversation, because you're talking from there. Most of them are probably business minded. If you talk numbers of, hey, you invest this, we have hopes that we'll get you into this style revenue, and then we all make more money. That's like speaking their language. And so as you started to scale this though, you're at, 40 plus units now. That's when you really started probably getting your operation bottlenecks happening. And like you mentioned, hiring people, and like the same thing in my company right now too. Like we've hired a lot more people, but we've also been able to be like even more selective with, certain tools that like things like HostBuddy that you've came up with. So what were the bottlenecks that, like the stressors that you were having that led you to like you and Sam and your partners to be like, hey, this is the solution that we know other hosts will need, because we know it could solve the problems that we are having? What were those specific issues that you were dealing with?
Yeah, so I think we looked at it from a few different lenses of like, what if we had this when we first started? Also, what if we had it now? Like, what could we do, and how could we continue growing? The struggles that we were experiencing at the time, I mean, in 2023, we were at like 35 units. So we really haven't grown that much since then. mainly because we're focusing on the software, but we're still able to, like, I work 5 hours a week basically in my property management business, and that's it. We have a lot of really good team members that are taking care of a ton of stuff on our team and doing operations and all that stuff. So we use VAs. We still use VAs to this day. People think like if you're using AI for messaging, like we're using the VAs for it, but like people are starting to realize the VAs can do a lot more than just messaging. But at the time, it was like they're being held back by all of these little messages that are coming through. We have so many different units and different properties. Like sometimes the VAs are having to take like 20 minutes to go and like figure out a solution to this one particular thing because like they're like, damn, I can't remember where the breaker is for this. It's like if you just load all that information into an AI, and like granted, we do have like a knowledge base and Notion and everything like that, but like when it comes down to it, like the AI is going to be able to remember all of the little things about previous conversations, everything about your property. So nothing existed at the time to do this, to automate those messages. And we're like, we want to continue growing our business without having to hire more people. And at 35 units, we're thinking like, we could easily even get rid of a VA if we wanted to, but now we can just pivot them into doing the things that are going to keep us competitive. So we shifted them into doing a ton of different things now. So like they're focusing on like updating our website and doing marketing and social media and finances and things like that. And like we had to like teach them how to do that. And they're great. Like they know our business and they can do that. But like, why hire more people and continue to have them on the computer, just like answering these little like Wi-Fi questions and things like that, or like how to troubleshoot using the TV when like, we know that the future of AI could support that. So that's what we experienced. And we thought that there had to be a way. When we looked on the market, there was nothing that did that for us back in 2023. So we were like, wow, this could be a perfect opportunity for any size host, because like if we had it when we had, when we were working our W-2s and we were running to the property to clean it every day, which we learned from, and we figured out how to automate the cleaning process and all the maintenance and all that stuff. But if we had an AI responding to all of our guests throughout the course of the day, and we could actually focus on our day job and start and continue making our money and do our thing, it makes your life a lot less stressful. It allows you to not have to hire more people so early, because we hired a VA after we got a few properties because we were like, we just need to get help, right? But like the AI can just automate 90+% of that, and you get a lot of your time and money back.
I can fully attest to that. And this is not sponsored by HostBuddy. Like, I just love the product that they have built, because Jay is right. Like, I have literally done that with HostBuddy in my business, because now, and people look at AI like, oh, it's taking over everything and, replacing jobs and all, which, that's a whole other conversation to be had down the line. But for right now, how I use it is I have 2 VAs and I have an operations manager. They go inside of HostBuddy, check on things. They're making sure, they use it as a tool, but they don't have to answer all the, hey, what's the Wi-Fi? What's the door code? All the things that we and I always like laugh about this, because I send out a ton of automated messages with all of this information, and guests just never read it anyways, and they still want to reach out. But now the same with you. Like, we have 20+ properties now, and I make some really badass, SOPs, and like I have all these cool spreadsheets and all this, but then I know the properties in and out because I've built most of them, or like basically get them set up ready. But my VAs, they don't know it like that. They're scrambling. They're taking, they're on the phone. They're like for 10 minutes looking for an answer, when now I've even trained them to just like go into HostBuddy and test the property and ask it a question. If you can't, don't dive through every Google Doc we have. If you're on the phone, just jump in and ask it, or let AI answer some of these simple, basic questions, like the Wi-Fi one. I have signs in there with the Wi-Fi name, and they still ask it. That's not where the VA should be spending their time. Now I have the same thing where one of my VAs now has become like very high level with the marketing. She does a lot of the newsletters, and she like does our content creators, and handles all that. Another one of my VAs now, she is just strictly phone customer support, really. And she doesn't answer any of the nuanced questions that can be answered in a text message. She's bilingual, so she's able to vary within things like that. But she's been able to free up her time to focus more on, because we do a lot of direct booking, so we get a ton of calls of people trying to find the perfect stay for them. They don't need to be answering, like, where's the light switch in the property? Like, that should be something that is simply answered. So I do just as a person that is genuinely using the product every single day, it has become something that has been very, very valuable in the business. So y'all have integrated a lot of different things lately that I really like open phone. You'll have the Notion integration. How have you and yourself in your own business, and then how have you seen other property managers really utilized HostBuddy as a tool within their system that maybe some others aren't thinking about, or ways that you've just didn't even think would come about over time, that you're like, dang, that actually is a like a very valuable feature for hosts that we didn't even expect to be like an extra bonus to them.
Yeah, I think after we automated the messaging and just made that, as efficient as possible, there's layers to, the additional tools that we've added. So I think smart templates, and there's a lot of things in our software that like, it's so customizable that like people end up just like figuring out ways to use things that like we haven't even thought of. And like, I may or may not have like specific examples for that, but like things like smart templates. So we have smart templates is what we call it inside of HostBuddy. And it's the same thing as what you see in a PMS for the most part, as far as like, it's a scheduled message, right? It's going to go at a specific time, triggered by a specific event, like a booking or check-in or whatever that is. And what we've done is add a ton of AI personalization to that, context checking, things like that, so that if you don't want a message sent out to a guest who's had a negative experience, it won't do that. If you want it's going to check the conversation so that if you have a message that goes out after somebody checks in saying like, hey, hope you got settled in all right, let me know if you need anything, it's going to check that conversation before it sends the message and realize, oh, this guest actually already checked in and they said everything's fine, so I'm not going to send that message. So it's those little things that like prevent you from still sounding like a robot, even though you're actually technically more robotic on paper because you're using AI. It's those things that just add a little bit more personal touch. And then it's also going to be like, hey, I hope you had a great travel in from Houston and you're getting settled in all right. Those little touches will make them feel a lot more supported than just having, that standard message that goes out to everybody. So that's a big one. All the little integrations, like you mentioned, Notion, we have guidebook integrations. The action item notifications are actually really cool too. So that's another feature where it's like so customizable that like, we still haven't even hit like the limit of what you can do with that. And we're still hearing from hosts on how they're using it. So the cool thing is like action items are generated when the AI doesn't necessarily have the solution or, the information to provide a solution to the guest, or it's just something that it feels like you need to know. Like, hey, like the guest is checking out and they're like, hey, just so you know, like this step is wobbly when I walked out, like no worries or anything. Just want to let you know. That's going to get sent to you as an action item. So those little things, you can make sure nothing falls through the cracks. It's like you're always staying in the loop. You're not missing things, but then you can also customize who these things are going to, and you can make custom categories and custom instructions. It's all natural language processing. So you can say like, hey, if like what I have for my properties is like, if a guest mentions that they've checked out, send a message to my cleaner. And so my cleaner gets a text message saying, hey, they've checked out early and it's, 9 a.m. Now they can go to the property and go and clean, versus beforehand, like they wouldn't have gotten anything, wouldn't have even known that the guest is checking out. Previously, that would have to be a manual task, but that's just a quick example. Like you can do that with maintenance too, and like send specific things to your electrician or your maintenance person, whoever, or like your neighbor, or like whatever you want. Really, it's very customizable, and I'm just looking forward to how many different things people do with this, because I think it's just like the opportunities are endless with the natural language processing idea.
I even myself haven't even fully dove into like the action items are great because that's like the main thing I have the VAs go in and check specifically and all that. But I even myself am excited to dive in further and see like the customizable things of splitting out those tasks and doing that. But one really cool feature that I love about y'all's product is the upsells, actually, because I've converted many people, and and we all in this industry, like there will be gap nights or orphan nights, as Price Labs calls them, and things like that, where you have one night, maybe somebody's come and stay on a Friday through a Sunday, and you happen to have that that Sunday night still open for them to book. I think in the software, I set it up to where like 14 days, I think, before they, somebody's going to check in, they'll get a message saying, hey, we have a night open up for you. We'll offer it to you for, I think, a 15% discount, which, how do you feel about that? Would you like to take it? And we probably have converted 30 to 40% of those people in just that message alone. And we all know as hosts, it's way cheaper to have a guest stay longer than it is to keep constantly turning them over and doing those things. So that one has been really, really cool. And I don't want to get ahead of it. You don't have to announce anything, but are there any other like upsell ideas that you've seen people use or y'all have considered, or like, because in the end, like as hosts right now, and we talked about this before we even got on, like the thing I'm seeing in the market is a lot of people have a couple properties, maybe 3 or 4, and they're trying to get some of their time back, and this is a great way, but it's also like they're trying to get more revenue out of the property they have. And so what have you seen on the upsell front, and like what are your thoughts of like where hosts can like use that software and come up with some ideas of how they can make more money from the guests that are already come and stay with them, or in their property in general?
there's so many possibilities for how people can make more money. And I think this is actually a really cool way for you to separate yourself out and actually like stay competitive and make the money that you need to make. It's little things. Like I actually just stayed at an Airbnb this past weekend, and like, all these little upsells are through like partner companies, like book a private massage, book a private chef, book this, this discount to this city tour or whatever. And it's all through platforms like Viator, where it's just like a simple link, but you're earning commission when they go and book that. So those things can be inserted into smart templates. And we've been guiding people sort of individually on how to do that on a case by case basis, because we do want to eventually create a system where you can input all of your little upsells and links and things like that. And it's very straightforward. Right now, like you can do it, it's through smart templates, and you can basically list it all out and say like, hey, if you're interested in any specific things or you want to explore the city, we do have a number of discounts with our, partners in the industry or in the area that we'd love to offer you. So things like that, where like it's going to go and then upsell it for you. It has all the information on each individual one. And if they're like, yeah, sure, we'd actually love to do like a boat tour. That sounds cool. Do you have anything like on the water? And then we can upsell it that way. So HostBuddy naturally is going to go and try to upsell those things for you because it has that information. We've partnered with Mount recently. So Mount is essentially an upselling platform for experiences and things like that. So all of the standard Mount upsells, if you're a Mount user, are going to be uploaded into your HostBuddy account. HostBuddy is going to naturally mention them in conversation and be able to upsell those experiences. So there's so many different platforms that are doing that, but we just added recently into our user guide a way for you to specifically create a smart template around that so that users can understand like this is possible. The big thing around like upsells for early check-in and late checkout and things like that. And the industry is changing so much, and the OTAs are changing, specifically Airbnb, where it's like they only want you to send or receive money through their platform. And without that direct API connection into Airbnb, it's difficult to manage that actual payment process. So they have their own resolution center and all this stuff. So it's like connecting that to a third party. Like there are very few softwares that are actually able to access that information. So eventually having that access would be amazing, because then you can say like, hey, we have this extra day, instead of, the upsell being received and them saying, yeah, I'd love to extend for $50, and then you getting an action item and your team jumping in to do it. Although that's very, very simple, it would be amazing for HostBuddy to go and actually make that change. So as we continue growing, we'll be able to establish that as a direct partner, hopefully with the OTAs, and make that process a lot simpler, so that you don't even have to do anything. Your team doesn't even have to look at the reservations, and they're like, oh, cool, this guest just extended, and the whole process is done. So yeah, that's something that you can look forward to in the future for sure.
Nice. No, I love that. And I think that's exactly where the future of hosting needs to go. Especially with, some more supply coming along, smarter, savvier hosts are going to get the lifetime value of customers or guests, whatever language you want to use, up more, because that is kind of where the bread and butter is going to be going forward. And you don't have to answer this, because I know I'm sure y'all are working very, very hard behind the scenes, and you could definitely be like, we'll get back to that one later on. I have tried AI voice answering services and stuff for my direct booking. They're horrible. I don't know if I'm the first one to say this. I've not found an impressive one yet at all, personally. Is that something y'all have considered behind the scenes looking into down the line? Again, you can tell me like, hey, I can't talk about that right now, or you can just let me know. Because that's one of my biggest struggles. I have not been able to find a way to, like those midnight, we get a ton of direct booking calls all the time. We use open phone. Well, I guess it's Quote now, or whatever they want to confuse everybody with calling it. We get direct booking calls at midnight and all this. And like, I tell my sales, like my VAs and all that, I was like, hey, like if they're not on, like you don't gotta like answer that question immediately. Like we can have sales hours, but I would love to have a way to like at least give them some information and feel like they're talking to somebody human. What's your thoughts on that? And like, what have you seen in the market before you don't have to go deep into, we're maybe developing some or whatever. Like, what do you kind of think of that part? Because that's been my biggest frustration with AI voice callers. I think that they're all terrible, and I haven't found anything that impresses me personally.
That's the challenge, I think, is it's like when someone's calling, they're looking to speak to somebody, and they like really care about that. They're not just looking for a quick answer, because if they would just text. And I think things are changing a little bit, hopefully, as time moves on, where like, although guests are becoming a little bit more reliant on just sending you a quick message, even though you have the information available in your welcome guide or whatever it is, hopefully they're not calling as much as well. So I think like that's kind of how things are developing, but we've seen the same thing, and we've considered that, I would say, at the very least, on our end of like, how can we implement the phone into this whole process? And so I think that is something that will be added at some point when we feel like it's there. But it's one of those things where it's just like, for us, it doesn't make a ton of sense to develop that for our users right now. It is something that is requested to a degree from our users. Like, people definitely are looking for that, but I would say the majority are, they have people on their team already as well who are able to answer phone calls. And yeah, I think also, Quo is providing their own, I forget what they call it, but their own AI.
It's trash. It's so bad. It's so bad. I love Quo. I love everything about it. It's been awesome. But I tried their AI voice caller, and hey, maybe they'll refine some things. And if y'all want to come on, anybody ever watching this from Quo, and chat about it. But I tried it, and it was disappointment, I would say. But I agree with you. Like, RVAs I call it a digital hug. Sometimes these people just want to hear a voice on the other end that they know is not an AI person, or they just know that there's somebody there and they get that digital hug. So it's been, I was just curious as to like, you're more in the weeds of like all these things as they're coming up. So I'm sure you're hearing it from like hosts, and I was just making sure I wasn't like missing out on some kind of like voice agent out there that's just awesome, because everyone I've tried has just been super disappointing.
Same experience here. I mean, I think once we get to the point where it's indistinguishable, where the voice is like, they're having a full conversation, it's quick, it's witty, all these little things, and you can customize the AI voice too. Like, I wouldn't say we're a long way from that, but like it's a lot harder of a task to master than doing just the messaging. And the cool thing is, like, we can just plug our AI system into a voice AI, and our AI is already going to be able to provide the answers. It's just running through our system to get the answers, and it's having the same conversation, except now it's just a voice. So I think like we're happy with that, but I think like just the way that we've seen things develop so far hasn't gotten to that point.
Makes sense. Yeah, that was more of a personal gripe right there. I was just curious. I'm like, somebody needs to develop this, because it has been definitely one of the things that has been irking me over time.
Well, that's why we added the Quo AI voice conversation, the voice records. When you do have that conversation over open phone, those will be stored in HostBuddy. So that's like that little bit of additional connection where it adds into the notes of the conversation. So now HostBuddy has the context of that phone call that your team had with the guest.
It takes the transcript from Quo into HostBuddy or something?
It's an AI voice summary. So yeah, Quo will automatically generate that actually when you have a conversation. And I think that's with all plan levels. I'm not 100% sure, but I do know, yeah, when your team has a conversation over the phone with a guest, it will generate that voice summary in Quo, and then our system pulls that summary and adds it as a note. So that HostBuddy is like, oh, cool, we just talked about this, light bulb that was out 2 hours ago. And now it knows that if it's mentioned in the conversation, it's not the first time they've mentioned it. So yeah, things like that, but it helps for sure.
Yeah, no, very cool. I love that the integrations, like once that integration came around, like that, even like your product was already amazing for just, how it integrated with messaging. But that has made, like, I hired an operations manager maybe a month ago, full time, was like my first big salary person, but she's awesome, doing amazing work. But like we would be on the phone. It was hilarious. We were on the phone, like, doing our like end of day wrap up one day. And there was a guest messaging, right? And we were like, oh, should we jump in? And I was like, oh, just wait a second. And then like HostBuddy sent like the perfect answer back. And she was like, wait, who sent that? You're on the phone with me. How did you? And I was like, yeah, that's HostBuddy there. Like she was new to it. She didn't know how we used it and all that. And it just blew her mind. And I was like, we're obviously all like big advocates for HostBuddy AI over here. As we kind of wrap up, and anybody that's out there, if you haven't checked it out, we will put a link in the description for HostBuddy, HostBuddy.ai, right? That's the website, I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
Cool. We'll link that in the description. If somebody's watching this, and I always kind of wrap up most videos with this, and I know my answer maybe, but you might have a different one. If somebody's watching this and they have a couple properties, or they've been, on the fence about maybe getting into their first property, what is an actionable tip that you would want somebody to take from this conversation or from your journey that they, over the next few weeks or few months, can implement into their own to really take the steps going that route? Because I think that's a lot of people, they just have a fear of failure and they get analysis paralysis. And sometimes just hearing from somebody like yourself that has went through the trial by fire can kind of give them that spark that they may have been looking for.
Yeah, I think the trial by fire aspect of things, it's it's real, but I would say you can't necessarily afford to spend as much time in the fire as you used to be able to. And I think we all know that. So what's really important, I think, like nowadays, like what I would do is find somebody, if you don't have somebody who's already managing, find somebody to shadow at least for quite some time. Join the Facebook groups, join the communities, and figure out what tools people are using to automate the tasks that make things really difficult. And once you get set up with the right stuff, like, cause I talked all day to people who have these systems that they've been using for years and they're like, this is horrible. Like, what do you recommend? And I'm like, how and why did you get on that to begin with? So I think you can skip all of those issues by just connecting with people who are already successful and shadowing what they're doing and just figuring out, because people are in this industry are great. They're willing to share that information with you and they're encouraging. And there's a abundance mentality, I think. So that's the first thing that I would do, and just and figure out what the best tools are, the best ways that you can automate, because as soon as you automate those quick tasks that are going to take up your time, the sooner you're going to be able to grow your business and focus on the actual things that matter nowadays, like, really improving your properties and focusing on the quality over just, getting doors, So that's what I would recommend. I know that's really simple, but some people will just jump into it without trying to find what's best, and they'll just Google like, best cleaning software. And like sometimes, a lot of times the ones at the top, they're going to come up on Google, but there's a lot of new softwares that are coming out there too that are, people are loving. That's why, like you mentioned in the Facebook groups and stuff, like you hear a lot of things, people talking about HostBuddy. And that's what I love about just this industry is like, oh, I just started using this and it's great. And like, it's all new stuff and people are willing to try it out. And if you have people who, have really strong recommendations, then they can give that to you. And they've been thrown in the fire for you not to be thrown in the fire. So take advantage of that and be successful too.
Yeah, no, I love it because it's just so true. Like, especially nowadays, like if you have never been in this industry and you just heard a few things and you're like, oh, you heard one guru, make $50,000 a month and never work through rental arbitrage and all that. Like, maybe take a step back and try to see if you like I said, work under somebody, go really deep dive into some of these groups and pick a few people's brains. Like there isn't, I think, an abundance mindset for most short-term rental hosts, but I like to like also be an advocate for new people to like make sure you actually like this, because this is not just plain Jane real estate investing. This is a business mixed with real estate investing most of the time. And that's a different world for a lot of people. And I saw a lot of people jump into this and didn't really know what they were getting into. But then the successful ones did understand that this was coming from a business real estate kind of, mix of things too. So great advice as always, Jay, and always super happy to catch up with you. I'm sure we'll definitely be staying in touch, and I can't wait to see all the things that HostBuddy rolls out. Let me be the first one to know if y'all do test out any voice agents. I would love to give my opinion on it. And then, it will leave all your information in the description. Where can people reach out to you if they wanted to chat or ask any specific questions best about, everything you've done and HostBuddy in general?
Yeah, you can hit me up on Instagram. It's JAY_Ullrich. I'm sure we'll put it in the description too. You can also email me, honestly, JAY@HostBuddy.ai if you have any questions or things like that. We do free demos. We do 14-day free trial for anybody who starts. So it's really fun to just like see the look on people's faces when they're like, I've been doing this manually all this whole time, and now I can just have this system take over it. So yeah, I love it. I'm super passionate about it. I'm loving to talk about anything AI, anything short-term rentals. So hit me up, and looking forward to talking soon.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you taking the time, and we'll chat with you very, very soon. If you made it all this way to the end of the video, please hit subscribe. Let us know in the comments what kind of content you want to see. If you want Jay to come back for a deep dive, part 2, maybe we do some live demos of HostBuddy or anything like that, let us know in the comments so we know that's the kind of content you want to see. Thanks for watching. Take care.